Hi everybody, I'm Molly Brown, a freelance creature and character designer, and today we'll be finishing up our renders by going through just a few more quick edits that we can make in either Procreate or Photoshop. I'll still be using Procreate. The first one I'll be altering is saturation. Saturation has to do with the intensity of your colors. Most of the time, raw renders are pretty muted in terms of color. This is especially the case for me, since I went with a more muted color palette in the first place. However, I'd like there to be some pops of color, especially where there's blood and subsurface scattering. Whenever I'm making edits like this, I actually duplicate my render's layer, so I can always go back to my less edited render. This also allows me to pick out certain things I don't like in a render, erase them, and then merge them down to make a full image. In other words, if there are certain things I don't like in my more saturated render, I can erase them. Perhaps I want an area to be more muted. I can then erase it, and now my less edited render will show through. And then I can merge them when I get the desired look. I take this kind of approach with all my edits. I'll duplicate the less edited version, not only to have it to revert back to, but to also merge it with other renders. Next is color balance. Color balance is really great for pulling an image together, especially if you added elements that initially weren't there before. For example, I added some saliva and glossy highlights to my creature. I can make these highlights blend even better into my image by manipulating the color of my highlights just slightly, so they all carry the same hue. For some reason, my go-to with color balance is slightly warmer shadows and cooler highlights, ones that are closer to cyan. I think it adds a nice look. Of course, this is more up to personal preference. Try out different variations of color balance and find one you like best. You can alter the hue of your shadows, middle tones, and highlights. There's all sorts of interesting combos you can get with those options. I play with sharpness quite often too. I don't add too much, but I really enjoy crisp edges in my work. Since 3D renders tend to have a bit of noise, the edges can appear a little bit softer. So I only add a bit of sharpness to crisp edges, but also not enough for the noise of my render to become extremely apparent. Lastly, I like adding a bit of chromatic abbreviation. This sort of seems to separate the color channels of your drawing, adding a bit of displacement between them. This can add a very nice effect to your renders and help in further bringing it all together. I only add the smallest, slightest amount of this effect since I don't want it to be at all distracting. All the edits in this video are meant to be very subtle and just help in unifying your piece. If any of these effects are used to a great degree, they can really take away the focus from your piece and make it more about them. Finally, at the end of all this perfecting, fine-tuning, and tweaking, you have your first finished render. Renders like these can be added to your portfolio, not only for their quality, but for the fact it's your original design. You can finally just take some time for yourself to celebrate. You finished your first render.